Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because today we're peeling back the velvet curtain on a story that has stunned royal watchers and left millions around the world asking, why would Prince Harry refuse the king's personal invitation to stay at Buckingham Palace, and instead choose a hotel? This isn't just about hotel rooms and palaces. It's a glimpse into a strained father-son relationship, a deep-seated fear for safety, and the ever-widening divide in a family once seen as unshakable. So settle in, because this story is more than tabloid fodder. It's a human drama playing out on the world stage. Let's start with a shocking image. Picture it: Buckingham Palace at dusk. Its golden gates stand open, guards in scarlet uniforms marching in flawless rhythm. Tourists gasping as they snap photos of one of the most famous residences on Earth. Behind those gates, history lives. Kings and queens, weddings and funerals, secrets whispered in gilded hallways. And yet, Prince Harry, son of the reigning monarch, looked at this fortress of tradition, the symbol of power, and said no. Yes, you heard that right. The King of England extended his son an olive branch, an invitation to stay under the royal roof, to be protected by the best-trained security on the planet, to sleep in chambers that once housed his grandmother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. But Harry declined. Instead, he booked a hotel. A decision so baffling, so layered in irony, that has triggered both outrage and sympathy. But before we ask why, we need to step back. Because this isn't just about a May trip to London. This story begins years ago, in 2020, when Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, made the earth-shattering decision to step back from royal duties. That moment, often called Megxit, was more than a headline. It was a fracture, a breaking point that left scars still visible today. Since relocating to America, Harry has made no secret of his concerns about safety. Again and again, he's warned of the threats he faces in the UK, insisting his family is vulnerable without the taxpayer-funded security he once enjoyed. Courts have become battlegrounds as Harry fought for reinstatement of those protections. His words, filled with urgency, revealed not just paranoia but genuine fear. And yet, when the king himself offered the sanctuary of Buckingham Palace, a fortress guarded around the clock, Harry turned away. Why? Here's where the story sharpens. Insiders say that when the king heard his son was flying into London for court hearings, he extended a hand. "Stay at the palace," he said. A gesture that sounded, on paper, like reconciliation, or at least basic hospitality. But Harry, once again, said no. One palace staff member, with a hint of sarcasm, remarked, presumably because the palace is so unsafe, he decided a hotel was better. That sting of irony echoes in the halls of royal gossip. After all, the palace is swarming with police protection, CCTV, private guards, and walls thicker than medieval castles. Why would Harry believe a public hotel offered more security than the crown jewel of Britain's defenses? This is where things get murkier. Some sources claim Harry's rejection wasn't just about security. It was about symbolism. To accept his father's offer might mean stepping back into the very world he's been fighting to distance himself from. A gilded cage is still a cage, no matter how luxurious the room. Perhaps staying at the palace would send the wrong message, that he was still tethered, still beholden to the institution he once fled. But there's another layer. Reports suggest Harry's schedule in London was shrouded in secrecy. Even palace aides didn't seem to know his exact movements. Was this caution or mistrust? A Times source hinted that the king had tried. I don't know what more the king could have done. He offered Harry a place at Buckingham Palace, but it seems even that wasn't good enough. So what happened next? While Harry was in London, the king's diary was packed, treatments, engagements, and a calendar overflowing with royal obligations. The two never met. A spokesman for the Sussexes issued a carefully worded statement. It unfortunately will not be possible due to His Majesty's full program. The Duke, of course, is understanding of his father's commitments and hopes to see him soon. On the surface, it sounds polite, respectful, even. But beneath the words lies a silence, days passing without a father and son even sharing a cup of tea, let alone healing wounds that have deepened over 5 years' attention. And yet, the question lingers. If Harry truly wanted to see his father, wouldn't staying at the palace have made that easier? Wouldn't proximity, just a corridor away, have created at least the possibility of an encounter? Instead, his hotel choice built a wall, invisible but undeniable, between himself and the monarchy. Here's where the contradictions sharpen into something almost cinematic. Harry, the prince who speaks of fear for his life in Britain, chooses a hotel over a palace bristling with security. Harry, who has publicly longed for reconciliation with his father, turns down the very roof that could have brought them together. Is this caution, defiance, or something else, something hidden? Because there's another angle to consider. Hotels, unlike palaces, offer privacy of a different kind. In a hotel, Harry controls the environment. Who enters, who leaves, what conversations are overheard. In the palace, he is back under the watchful eye of courtiers, staff, and the ever-turning machinery of the firm. Perhaps to him, the palace isn't a sanctuary at all. Perhaps it's the very place where his walls feel thinnest. Imagine that for a moment. To the world, Buckingham Palace is untouchable, a fortress of tradition. But to Harry, it may represent something entirely different. Exposure, surveillance, even betrayal. If true, then the irony of his decision fades into something darker, more tragic. And so, as the cameras followed Harry in London, the absence of a father-son reunion was glaring. Whispers spread. Was this yet another missed opportunity? Another brick in the wall separating the monarch and the spare? Or was it, perhaps intentional, an avoidance both men silently agreed to? The truth remains cloaked in speculation. But one fact is undeniable. Harry had a choice between a palace steeped in centuries of history and a hotel room with a key card lock, and he chose the latter. Which brings us to the heart of the mystery. Why? Is this about safety or symbolism? Fear or pride? And more importantly, what does this tell us about the future of the monarchy and the son who has distanced himself from its gilded heart? Because make no mistake, this wasn't just a personal decision. It was a statement. A statement that echoed across front pages, fueled debates in Parliament, and left loyalists and critics alike wondering if reconciliation between father and son is slipping further out of reach. But the story doesn't end here. No, in fact, this is just the beginning. Because as we peel back the layers, we uncover deeper tensions, courtroom battles, whispered betrayals, and a father's health shadowing every interaction. The May trip to London may have seemed brief to outsiders. Just a few days, a courtroom, a charity event, but every hour was loaded with unspoken tension. Prince Harry arrived with the weight of his family's safety on his shoulders, yet the world watched every step, as if it were a chessboard, each move a potential scandal. For the Duke, every handshake, every public smile, carried the burden of history, expectation, and heartbreak. He attended the multi-sports competition he launched years ago, an event honoring wounded, sick, and ill-service personnel, a cause close to his heart. There, surrounded by medals, flags, and the quiet resilience of those who had endured unimaginable trials, Harry seemed at ease. The smiles came easier in the presence of veterans who understood sacrifice, where his role was one of purpose, not tension. But behind the applause, the cameras, and the cheering crowds, one question lingered. Why had he refused the palace, the very heart of his heritage, for a hotel room down the street? Sources close to the royal household paint a picture that is almost surreal. Even after the king's offer, the Duke's decision remained resolute. I don't know what more could have been done. One insider told the Times. He was offered Buckingham Palace, yet he declined. It seems even the safest walls weren't enough. Think about that for a moment. The world's most famous palace, armed with centuries of security expertise, and still, Harry chose civilian hotel. The reasoning, even insiders admit, remains murky. Some suggest it's a question of trust. To return to the palace might signal acceptance, a softening of the boundaries Harry has spent years erecting between himself and the firm. It might indicate that he's willing to step back into the web of tradition, hierarchy, and scrutiny he has so clearly rejected. And yet, the alternative, a hotel, provides a curious blend of security and autonomy. Here he controls access, chooses his route, and dictates the pace of his interactions. Here, he can be a father, a husband, a prince, without immediately becoming a cog in the centuries-old royal machinery. The optics of that decision were not lost on the media, the public, or the monarchy itself. Headlines blared contradictions. Prince Harry Snubs' palace. Duke chooses hotel over king's offer, safety or statement? And with every report, the layers of tension grew thicker. To the casual observer, it might seem trivial, a room change, a scheduling quirk. But in the corridors of power, symbolism is everything. A hotel key card in hand can be as much a declaration as a royal invitation politely declined. Meanwhile, in London, the king's schedule was unyielding. Treatment appointments, meetings with dignitaries, and ceremonial duties filled every slot. The two men never crossed paths. For some, this might read as coincidence, a logistical inevitability. For others, it reads like a silent, painful statement. Proximity does not equal closeness. A father and son separated not by miles alone, but by walls, visible and invisible, crafted over years of tension, resentment, and choices that neither fully controls. It is worth imagining the scene. Harry in his hotel room, overlooking a city he once called home, yet always with measured suspicion. The lights of London shimmer below, beautiful yet distant, like a world he belongs to yet can never fully inhabit. Perhaps he glanced at Buckingham Palace from afar, imagining the gilded halls, the echo of footsteps he would have once followed with ease. Perhaps he felt the pull of legacy, the magnetic tug of bloodlines and duty, and yet chose to remain on the periphery. Psychologists and royal analysts alike have speculated endlessly about these choices. Some say it is fear, the same fear that led him to appeal for increased security, a fear born not of imagination but of experience. Threats to his safety have followed him across continents, making every return trip a calculated risk. Others argue it is pride or principle, a statement that the Duke will not bend to tradition, will not allow protocol to dictate his family's safety or his own autonomy. And then there's the emotional dimension. No palace room, no security detail, no royal protocol can mend a fractured father-son relationship. That gulf, stretched thin over years of public scrutiny, media speculation, and personal grief, cannot be bridged simply by proximity. Harry's choice to stay elsewhere may have been as much about protecting his heart as it was about protecting his family. Behind the headlines, there are smaller, quieter moments that speak volumes. Veterans shaking Harry's hand, sharing stories of courage and survival. Staffers watching from a distance, noting the meticulous care with which he moves through public spaces. Even in a hotel, security officers shadow his every step. But there's a kind of freedom in that setting, a space to breathe, reflect, and exist without immediate judgment. In some ways, that temporary hotel sanctuary becomes more than a building. It becomes a stage for autonomy, an assertion control in a life long dictated by others. The irony, of course, is sharp. The palace is designed to protect, to symbolize power and stability. Yet for Harry, it may feel the opposite, an arena of constant scrutiny, a gilded cage where freedom is impossible. The choice between hotel and palace, then, is never just about walls, locks, or guards. It is a choice about narrative, agency, and identity. It is a statement. I will define my boundaries, even if it means standing apart from the very institution I was born into. And this, ultimately, is where the story resonates on a human level. Beyond the public spectacle, beyond the royal pageantry, lies a son negotiating his role of family whose expectations are colossal, whose gaze is relentless. He is negotiating identity, fear, and loyalty, balancing the desire to reconnect with the need to protect himself and those he loves. Every headline, every hotel stay, every refused invitation is a chapter in that ongoing negotiation. A high-stakes game played on a public stage where personal stakes are measurable. So what does it all mean for monarchy? For Harry? For the delicate, fragile bond between father and son? Perhaps it signals a permanent recalibration, a recognition that proximity alone cannot heal wounds and that autonomy may, paradoxically, be the bridge to eventual understanding. Or perhaps as a warning, a reminder that even princes are human, navigating fear, love, and legacy in a world that watches, judges, and records every move. And as we reflect on this, one final question lingers, one that will haunt royal watchers and curious observers alike. Can a relationship so public, so scrutinized, ever truly recover? Or is this hotel, and every choice like it, a symbol of something more enduring, a son asserting his place, on his terms, in a world that has never let him be simply Harry? History will watch, the media will speculate, and the world will continue to debate. But the truth, like all deeply personal stories, may remain locked behind the doors of a hotel room in London, known fully only to the man inside it, his family, and the silent ghost of a palace he chose not to enter. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Sometimes safety isn't about walls or guards. Sometimes freedom isn't about inheritance or prestige. Sometimes the hardest and most meaningful decisions are the ones that leave the world scratching its head, yet feel right deep in the heart of the person making them. As Harry's story unfolds, one thing is clear. The echoes of those choices will reverberate far beyond any hotel room, far beyond Buckingham Palace. They will shape perceptions, family dynamics, and perhaps even the future of the monarchy itself. So the next time you see a headline about a prince choosing a hotel over a palace, remember, there's always more beneath the surface, more behind the curtains, more in the spaces between the lines. And sometimes, the quietest decisions speak the loudest truths.